write my fiction for the evening news. The facts don't make the story. It's what my bosses choose. Did you ever think the truth would lose? Read my scripted views. Need an idea advanced? Got an army to treat cruel? Don't worry, baby. I'll fix your sinner soon. Just point me to the highest bidder. Turn us on and watch me. Lying in the morning, lying next to noon. You're trained to hear the TV, accept it all as true. We know you love our twisted views. Watch our fiction news. Station after station, when the night hour is near, the lights go up, the actors appear. Different theme songs ring, the same in your ears. It's time for scripted view. Better follow soon. Someone blew up a church. A pariah's name is true. A pariah, he must be guilty. Go ahead and write the script for you, for the scripted news. The scripted news is the way to peace. The scripted news is peace of mind. Yeah. I see what you mean now. No need to cry or bother feeling appalled. Half of our stories never happened at all. It's just interesting when people lie. See our scripted view. A sultry bleached blonde, the screen to adorn. She was once an actress in TV and porn. We let her tongue cut men to the core. She gives twisted views. A sugar coat and then more lies yet. Sometimes her victims play hard to get. She'll kill you if you second guess. Need more scripted views. You're trained to hear the TV, accept it as all true. Love our twisted views, watch our fiction anew. Go back to sleep, pretend we didn't talk. You breathe a word, I'll outline you in chalk. You have no idea how much we hate you. Leave me, don't stalk, said I'll see you in the next scripted news.
Sorry, I got cut off there. There we go. Don't know what happened. Hi, welcome to the Portal to Justice. It is February 22nd, 2018. And that is Zeph Daniels with Scripted News. And I post his music in the anti-NWO music page on Facebook if you ever want to check it out, or you can subscribe to his music on Spreaker. Anyways, we are talking about fake news with Miss Lotus Justice tonight. Let me get her. Let's see. One reading. I'm back. All right. Let's see. Lots of stuff to talk about tonight. Fake news, constitutional rights, inalienable rights. Got lots of questions for Ms. Lotus. It's crazy stuff going on. Crazy.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, hey, everybody.
It's the Portal that.
Are we getting some feedback?
We have lots of questions, you know. There's just so much fake news, it makes me want to throw up.
Well, it is. We are in times where things are moving very quickly. Are we getting bad feedback?
I'm not. Are you? On my end?
No, I can hear you. I just wanted to make sure that you're not getting feedback. I hear a little bit of echo on my end when I'm talking, but not after I finish talking. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Is that a little better?
So, oh yeah, that's good.
Okay. Yeah.
So I just think everything's moving very quickly. You know, I think a lot of things are happening very quickly.
Well, yeah.
You're seeing a lot of legislation changing.
Well, yeah. You know, California, Jerry Brown made it illegal in California for teachers to carry arms, and then he also let loose 10,000 sexual predators from jail, which just is totally crazy. It has to be Agenda 21.
Well, this is what I'm going to say about any acts of people like that. If in my mind, he is not acting rational if what's being reported is truth, because it's hard to, if everything exactly is. But let's say he is operating openly and just as contrary, where it seems contrary to public safety. of the American people, of the general public that are law-abiding and tax-paying, those types of people, just the people you perceive as just the general American, public. He has a duty to protect. That's his job. Like Donald Trump has said, his primary duty is protect the people and their assets and everything. And as a governor, that's the job of the governor, to protect the interests of the people of California, the American people within the territory of California. If he's acting in a way that seems contradistinct to any class of people, let's say children, he's putting children and women at risk for increasing the level of sexual molestation and attacks, and or even men in general, violent crime, men upon men in the streets, hurting other men and just the general family at large. If he's doing things like that, and there's any hint or proof that he's conspiring with organizations to undermine the safety and security of the American people, the president can act in such instances and invoke national security and basically shut that stuff down. But he doesn't even have to do that by declaration to the public. Such things could be done with the Department of Justice. If Governor Brown is operating in any open fashion, introducing criminal elements, but here's the issue: where are the attorneys in California not doing their job to challenge such egregious things? Why is there this consistent executive order negative?
That's the whole crux of the issue. Is there is no attorneys willing to challenge the state. It's a huge problem. So what
Well, I think it should be considered part of the evidence of why the judiciary needs cleaned up and why this nepotism and this demagoguery and this contrived deep state coup, whatever you want to call it. It's a bunch of people who get together in their bar union capacity as esquires and or people who serve these people or who are controlled and paid by these people. Because attorneys' primary purpose in life are to be middlemen for people who don't want to be known. Okay? That's what they do. They are representers for other people, instruments of state, and everything else. That's their job.
And the headquarters for Child Protective Services, ironically, is located in Los Angeles.
I just think that there should be a general outcry that he's challenging the safety and security of the people. There should be instruments within California that are not allowing this to happen. If the feds have to get involved, California is in sad shape. If the federal Department of Justice has to go and arrest a governor or a mayor of a city in this nation because the state attorneys and stuff and the governors and just the instruments of law in the state don't correct the course of the state, that's really a sad state of affairs. So, I think it's correctable, but I think he's putting the society at risk at large. If it's overcrowded, release all the nonviolent offenders that are drug addicts or weren't drug, So you would rather let pedophiles roam the streets than let out 10,000 minor misdemeanor or low volume victimless crime drug offenders out of your prisons? Please. He chose, an egregious class to release. That's the problem I have. I don't have a problem with the governor having the capacity to control the population and give conveyances of leniency and issue, say, have a mass prison release. But usually it's not by executive order. Was this by executive order? It's usually by a vote of the legislature.
I think it was through legislation because I don't think...
it's
contrary to the law, obviously.
The fact that they would let out any violent offenders, the fact that they would let out a large volume of violent offenders,
there was no
and they're not just violent offenders.
There to challenge this legislation.
Any citizen of the state of California has standing to ban the implementation of that legislation, but they should have already banned it before they released the 10,000 people. See, that's what people. People have the right to bring forth their own petition.
It seems like there's a mad rush to legalize, sexual...
It also seems to me that there's nobody affecting the general administrative process if there's no local parental organization that even had the wherewithal to raise enough money to hire an attorney to put an injunction into the courts. if this isn't happening in California, then there's a failure all around of the probably the entire system, where people are even being barred from putting in case law. I mean, there has to be a general breakdown if things that seem so egregious on the face of them that they challenge. They're basically allowing out a predatory 10,000 people of a class of people that only predate on one class of people, children.
I mean, my heart goes out to every parent that lives in California. I mean, it's got to be so stressful with sending.
Well, I agree. I mean, but imagine okay. That'd be like saying we're going to let out 10,000 robbers, but the only people we're going to let out are the people who broke into old folks' homes. We're going to find the 10,000 people that like to rob old people and let them all out at the same time. I mean, that's equivalent to what they've done to the children in the state. They have let 10,000 predators open, and children have rights. So, I mean, I don't care what class of people. If any instrument or action by a state allowed 10,000 predators of a very particular class of people to be victimized potentially, I think people, what if they only let 10,000 rapists that only like to rape black women out? What if they did that? I mean, if you have to sit here and look at this in allegory and metaphor,
well,
they're wanting to let out 10.
Lotus, to me, just observing, it feels like there's this mad rush to legalize sexual deviant behavior, most of which is coming out of the state of California.
Yeah. They've always thought deviant behavior in certain circles. Okay, deviant behavior is treated as like it's the most disgusting thing on the surface, but on the backside, that's all the simulation of the process. On the backside, the people affecting the simulation are the most disgusting group of predatory people of all. That's the issue. They're just trying to make it look legitimate now. They're just not showing. They're starting to show their true colors now because they think that they've established a circumstance where we are going to think it's okay. That's what they're doing. These are the little ticklers and feelers. And so
to my next, there's this quote floating around online by it's a meme actually, and it's a quote from Justice Ruth Ginsburg, Bader Ginsburg. Mm-hmm. That pedophilia is quote unquote good for the children. Has
anyone cited where she said that? Like, is this in a case and is this in a public statement?
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to get at. Apparently, the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as an attorney for the ACLU, she co-authored a report recommending that the consent for sexual acts actually be lowered to 12, and I'm presuming that that's where this is being quoted from. That's just. And
she says the word pedophilia is good for the children.
I don't know if that's.
I mean, there's a way to attorn that. Like they could. I don't think that anybody should. I don't think the state needs to be telling the courts when to lower the consensual age to affect marriage licenses.
No, okay. It just seems contrary to the law, period.
Well, exactly, because, marriage, the only reason the state has an interest in, quote, marriage is because it issues licenses for them and gives you a state authorization to have babies and to create an estate together. And when you go get a marriage license, you actually create a community estate where the third party, you have invited the state to be a third party. You don't have to have the state to marry you. You can marry before. There's ways to do it. Now, if you want to go get all the tax things, this and that, you might have to get a state licensure. But the state is not what makes you married. Okay, so when you effect a marriage license, you're actually engaging in contract with state. So the only reason the state would ever have an interest in saying when someone can effect a marriage license is based upon when they can pick them up as a customer. See, so what's happening is you have the state, these corrupt bar unions, trying to create 9-year-olds as customers for marriage because they just doubled the number of marriages they can effect between the ages. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They just picked up customers. They don't care about whether it's bad or good for the kids. All they care about is the commerce and the affecting of licensures, which are state tithes. So that's the purpose. It's all about money. These people have no consideration. The people affecting these things have no consideration for the rights of people and to be treated as, as spiritual, caring, loving beings with a soul. They don't think of us like that. We're a commodity to them. So, these people that are doing this, they're just showing you their true colors. We're already commoditized as babies. From the time of our incarnation into this realm, you in this country are forcibly issued a certificate of live birth, which then becomes a birth certificate, which then is issued a social security number, which is a Sustacade Trust V account number, and you are issued your share of surety in the Jubilee Trust that runs the U.S. Treasury, the United States Treasury, and the World Bank, from my understanding. So you're already engaged in contract. Oh, and the bar unions are your automatic legal representatives because they put your soul print on a piece of paper that interfered with you claiming your estate in your lineal sanguinity, and you are now have contracted them to be your trustee. So those are the first two things that happen to you before you even, right after you get spanked. That's what happens to you in this society. Mm-hmm. So you're already in contract fraudulently against your will in an implied trust with the state before you even get to the age of 9. They're just trying to make it so that they, using that instrument, which is supposed to convey your rights to the jubilee and equity of this world, they're trying to turn that into your methodology of enslavement to the state where they can hawk your children as wares from birth, because I promise you they're selling babies out of probate courts. I promise you they are.
They've already legislated, and I think we did a show on this, to give the judges way too much power over the minors, as far as...
Oh, my gosh. They waive their rights. The judges in this state could move a child as a thing in a heartbeat by one collusion. And I don't even think they have to be put on the record, some backdoor deal. People are offended by the 9-year-old and 14-year-old. Be offended that your children are commoditized at birth and are being trafficked in probate court when you're too poor to defend against the racketeering of the bar unions. Be upset about that. That's your own government stealing babies.
And then we have...
They're little brown shirts stealing babies.
We have the mainstream media, the fake news. I don't even want to call them media.
They're not news. I wouldn't even call them media. I just call them the propaganda machine.
These hoaxes, everybody knows it's fake. Yet they double down and perpetuate these staged events, even when it's just so blatant and obvious. It's fraud on the American people. It's just unreal. It's almost.
It's starting to get repugnant and disgusting.
That's what I was going to say. It's just stomach churning. It's very stressful. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how can people stomach so much? I don't know. But
we're taught to be prudent. We're taught not to jump to violence. We're taught that we're supposed to use the systems of law, the systems of public voice. We're supposed to use all the instruments afforded to us, and that includes free speech, freedom to assembly, freedom, self-defense, the right to bear arms. If we start choosing, and this is a right in this country, and if we have to get to this point, they don't want to correct their course pursuant to the law and such, and all the instruments of state begin to fail. And they'll start correcting things, and I think they're starting to correct things. But they need to start giving some people some proof that they are affecting corrections by some indictments and some arrests of some big names. Because I'm personally tired. Okay, in the term that they've been arguing. Okay, I'm just going to put it in this perspective. How many of our brothers and sisters that have affected victimless crimes, just crimes against themselves, self-immolation of drug addiction? How many of our brothers and sisters have been trafficked through the federal and state industrial complex for minor pickups on drugs, while people who have committed treason in the course of the same time frame have sat unindicted? You have to think about that. So hundreds of thousands of the poor and the impoverished can just be cycled through the system when they can't even affect one indictment for treason, sedition, or racketeering or anything up in the FBI or the executive branch. That's ridiculous. That's utterly ridiculous. And that needs to be put in front of the American people's faces. You have to see the disparity between the elite and the poor in this circumstance. They can't throw one elite for the hundreds of thousands of the poor and disenfranchised. They've ran to the prison industrial complex, which is squarely repugnant and unconstitutional the way it's being run.
Yeah,
It's slave trading, folks.
In fraud against the state, they're operating in fraud against.
It's gulags. Okay,
that ensure these
look,
bonds
all we have
in the judiciary.
Look, we have turnstile concentration camps called prisons and jails, and we have turnstile, basically ovens, because they disappear our kids in probate court and rip them off the street with force and without warrant.
And fraud.
So they're basically brown-shirting our babies openly right in front of us within the court system, within the judiciary, same way they did in Nazi Germany. They all had uniforms, folks. They all had uniforms. That's why people let them, carts of people in. So we got uniforms stealing our babies, uniform states, people in uniform states, and agents of authority stealing our babies outright from people's homes, from hospitals, and disappearing them. And I understand we even have some NHS, we have some national instruments doing such things on behalf of the potentially the military now. But the military medical facility is seizing children. What is this? I haven't vetted all of this yet, but there's some pretty big claims going about.
Did you check that?
So
website,
now you have the feds seizing babies.
medicalkidnap.com.
Medical kidnapping. I mean, now you're talking about the federal medical kidnapping. What are they doing? You're trying to hide genetic mutation. What are you doing here? You picking up? You need kids for testing with certain DNA guidelines. What's going on? So you have people in uniforms of the state kidnapping, stealing, and trafficking our babies openly. That's an open fact.
In the courts. No due process.
Right, and you can get no remedy in the courts. And not only that, the courts are supporting the kidnapping within their own system, pursuant to the way that they're denying claims and giving states immunity. As in our case, this is prima facie. They've never once, and the whole time we've been appealing these, even given us close to a merit review. We just ask for merit reviews. Instead, they go, no, the state's immune. Okay, I don't care if they're immune. I want my kid back. If you're going to say they're immune from the criminality, where's the kid? Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're not even looking at cases to see if children are being trafficked.
No,
they don't care. They're giving them carte blanche immunity.
We have countless parents in the portal to justice that have reported fraud on the court to their local DAs and to the DOJ
or
and the FBI. That it's fraud on the court, and that they have no remedy in the courts, so they're going to the FBI and the DOJ, and there's honest services fraud being committed, and there's nobody that is accepting these complaints or the attached evidence. They often will get letters back saying, "Oh, it doesn't meet the."
It's a Holocaust. You know, I'm going to tell you something. You can say what you want about the first quote Holocaust and who died and who didn't. Who caused it? That's history, but I'm telling you, I'm living through one right now. All they have done is made the concentration camp systems of taking people and putting through labor camps and disappearing them through these systems. They just disguised it in the judiciary, guys. They just disguised it in your instruments of state. It's still fascism. Mm.
And the courts are operating
it's the same
this way
stuff.
accordingly. They're operating this way accordingly.
And mind you, I'm going to make this. But here's the central point. They're breaking the law. This isn't lawful. The law does not allow the things that they're doing. Mm-hmm. The law does not allow cops to go up. I don't care what the case law is establishing, because, see, that's what they do. Attorneys are torn. They make exceptions. Right now, you know what they're the attorneys for? The fascist cop unions. You know why they're the attorneys? They are the legal representatives of the cop unions. You know why? Because the cops work for them, guys. The cops work for the attorneys. The attorneys defend the cops. They promote case law within their own attorney private unions. See how that works? And the own attorney private unions, guess what? The cop powers, police powers, is an invention of their bar union. They created police powers. They are an invention of the bar union. So cop powers, police powers, are powers that were invented extra constitutionally. That's the same as saying unconstitutionally. There's no such thing as extra, really. Extra means we're just arguing on whether you call it unconstitutional, but we say it's legal. That's what it is. It's been a legal expansion of the judiciary to actually have an army, The only reason you all think the judiciary is what it is because it's a private foreign union with an army.
So you
that
and I,
comes
you
with
and I
a gun.
we discussed a case where, okay, you have constitutional rights and then you have inalienable rights. And
right, I mean, right, you have substantial rights that are unalienable, and those are the natural rights of men. The right to self-defense.
So
the right,
when you go before the courts and you have an attorney represent you, you're forfeiting your rights.
When you have a legal representative of a bar union represent you in a court of law, you are accepting that you are their ward. Okay? You are now have no say. You have surrendered your substantial rights and allowed them to abrogate them, hypothecate them, and subrogate them at their will, not even necessarily to your benefit, to settle the claim. And if their fiduciary duty, people, is to settle the claim on behalf of the state, which is the fiduciary duty of every attorney, because every is an agent for the state. That is within their open expression of who they are. They are servants for the state. No matter where you hire the attorney, out privately, and he costs you $45,000 for one little ditty, or you get assigned the attorney because you're impoverished and you ask for paupers. If you take on an attorney, a legal representative esquire, who holds a title of nobility of esquire as issued by this state of Ohio Bar Association or whatever instrument of the state union, who have been left in charge of your judiciary, they serve the state. They don't serve the people. It says the state. They don't serve you even if they are representing you in one of their private jurisdictional forums. They represent the state. Their job is to make sure the state is always on top. Mm-hmm. And therein lies the gaming. If you're the state and you define what the laws of the state are, and you...
that's rampant amongst licensed bar union attorneys, called honest services fraud, which is 18 USC. It's like rampant.
Oh, attorneys have always been a scourge to philosophers. Aristotle, in Aristotle time, and Greek and Roman times, they were called sophists. Sophists were not well liked. They had low morals and scruples because they were, at that time, people who were enlightened to the constructs and the laws of the Republic, but chose to sell their knowledge of how to get around them for their own personal gain. Like, they're the guy that knows how to break into the building that's not, it's like they would do things because they could, not because it was the right thing to do for the Republic. They didn't care if it undermined the constructs of the Republic. They would do it for their own personal lucre, benefit, and gain. And they sold their wisdom. So they weren't really looked upon they considered a person in disrepute, really. But from the sophist side, they were saying, well, we're pushing the boundaries of law to argue the particularities and da-da-da. And so they had their assignment. But you can see where their argument of particularities lies with children and pedophilia. When is it okay for a child to be forced into having sex with a 40-year-old man? When is it okay for me to sell my daughter to my best client, as payment? I mean, you see, these are the particularities based on age, legal contract. There's not a discussion on that here. And yet they're trying to change that. The legal age of consent for contract, best of my knowledge, is 14, always has been. And, that goes back to, 2-3 generations ago, a 14-year-old boy might already be married and have inherited his dad's farm. I mean, that's not unusual way back in the day. Mm-hmm. But, so moving such things as in some laws, it's 18. Sometimes, I've seen case law and old case law where it's 18. So them trying to reestablish some line of age as a particularity that's up for discussion, as so that we can traffic babies to pedophiles, because they pay us a lot of money, that's not up for discussion. And so these people are bound by law.
Perverting the law,
but the problem is,
do it.
they're not following the law. These cults of sophists who are immoral and cultish in their nature and consider everything sellable and hawkable, they are not following the law. The law doesn't allow them to do what they're doing either. It's just like, okay, we were talking about Rod Klass's case, where everyone's like, he won his case. Well, he won a case, but it was a case that should have never been needed to be made, because what he went to the Supreme Court with was whether he has the right to challenge a statute or the unconstitutionality of his sentencing, though he took a plea or even agreed to be guilty. For the purposes of the terms of the plea agreement, he pleads or whatever, but he still has the right, even upon that plea, if he objected to the statute during the course of the proceedings and the lawfulness to it, he has a right to challenge it even after it's been adjudicated and he's been sentenced. There's a variety of administrative statutes and civil rules and criminal procedures and all these things that allowed him to do this, and yet someone told me that he was told by his attorneys he couldn't appeal this. So some other law firm pro bono took his case to the Supreme Court, and guess what? They reaffirmed he had the right to do something he already had a right to do. Mm-hmm. It's like a mockery. It's like why did that need to be said? Why do you have to reinvent the wheel every time? That's not how it goes. That district court, there should have been no discussion about that. And why in the District Court of D.C., when someone has averred an argument against the constitutionality of the statute and basically demurring to the jurisdiction of the court, in the District of Columbia, why would they move forward and impose or allow plea settlement? Why would you need to? I mean, it's like we're going through the motions of things that are already there for us, and we're reproving them. And I mean, I'm going to tell you, I'll just kick out a couple things in Title 28 that allow people to move causes of action. You can get arrest from judgments in 7 days in criminal causes by a Rule 34 motion. You can get a correction or reduction of sentence within 120 days of a judgment by a Rule 35 motion. These are criminal proceedings. You can do a notice of removal in a civil or a criminal proceeding under 28 subsection 1446 for averring violations of subsection 1443, which is the civil rights violations of a constitutional nature or an error of law or process. Now, and when you remove them under 1446, as far as I understand, the proceedings still continue in state court, but you have a challenge to the constitutionality of that, and that proceeding will go on independent. And you can process through that and actually win that case before your trials even come to terms. I mean, people have to understand. And see, Title 28, subsection 2403. That's when you can ask for the invention by the U.S. or a state court for a constitutional question. There are a variety of statutes and rules of criminal and civil procedure that allow you to challenge anything that they do, even after post-conviction. There's a whole section which very few people know about, which are special proceedings. This is in the criminal procedures. These are special proceedings under, these are called special proceedings under Section 2255. This is a special section of the criminal rules. And this is where you go and you can use proceedings under 2255 to continue a state criminal appeal. To continue a state criminal appeal.
So for educational purposes only. A lot of people don't understand that.
Absolutely. You can go read these. Go read these. It tells you that it says right here, to correct an illegal sentence. It's not like you're up for understanding. Mm-hmm. Go read what these say. These say, this is when you want to move a court to intervene. I mean, so for an attorney to tell someone, if an attorney told Rod Klass it wasn't appealable, that was bad counsel. And I'm glad that he went and got a second opinion or whatever, because if he chose to take legal representation, because people should treat attorneys and even your prosecuting attorney, you should treat a prosecutor. Imagine if a senior medical advisor could control everything on your body and you had no challenge to it. That's kind of what the prosecuting attorney is. Mm-hmm. If you went to an attorney and he gave you legal advice that you didn't agree with, go get another one. Do not accept the legal advice out of every attorney's mouth as fact.
No,
it's not necessarily fact. It's an opinion. You know, it's like their interpretation.
You have fraud on your case. There is no statutes of limitation for fraud on the court, and a lot of people don't know that.
No, there's not.
A lot of people don't know.
There's also no statute of limitations on motions and habeas corpus
for fraud, murder, and kidnapping.
Right. I mean, and you know, and like I said, there are a variety of ways within the criminal and civil procedures for, even if you read them yourselves, it tells you what the rules are for, and but go learn them. But for an attorney to tell Rod Class that was not an appealable case, I think that if that in fact is what happened, mm-hmm. I think that's egregious, and that attorney, that's horrible. That an attorney in the District of D.C. Now maybe they were thinking it's different because it's the District of Columbia. But as far as I know, the District of Columbia is still, considered within the territory. It's within the territories, and they have to comply with Title 28 just as much as we do. And I mean, I think, as far as I know, it applies to the District of Columbia pursuant to Title 28. It says it applies there. So, there's a variety of ways. So anyone who tries to tell you, well, once you've been convicted, you just get to sit out your plate. No, that's not the law. I mean, especially if you've averred that it's a bad statute, that you've been treated unfairly, that there's an error process of law. Even after post-conviction, you can do things like there's a Rule 60B, where there's a relief from judgment or order. Go read these sections of your. These are your laws too. They are the administrative code of the quote courts. But if you want to be an American, and considering the day and age of what's going on with some rogue activity within your judiciary and your cops and everything, I think it's highly advisable for every American to understand how a court and how the courts really work. Go sit and watch, some people get tickets. Go sit a day in their administrative courts where they have trials and see how things, particularly how they run them. I'm not saying that they're an accurate representation of law. That's a simulation of process. But there are rules that these people are supposed to follow, and they're not. The bar union members are not following them, and either it's through willful ignorance, miseducation, or in some cases, contrived intent to be criminals. And that's what we're focusing on. Me particular is that there are people who, even if they are willfully ignorant, somehow think they have the authority because they wear a robe to effect crimes against our nation, and steal our babies. I don't understand how any judge thinks that Title IV suspended due process of law. I don't understand how any judge, except for they think they can waive the rights of an infant, truly, they think they can just waive the rights of an infant. Now, I don't know how far up they think. Now, if your rights are waived as an infant, I mean, what is this, inquiry? Like, so, when the priest cross you, I mean, do you get that footprint on that plate and some the doctors there doing a little hexy thing, and you've had your rights suspended for the rest of your life? I mean, that's pretty much what they do. Mm-hmm. They're operating as if all of our rights are in suspension, our substantial rights, and our unalienable rights and our natural rights given to us by God, and the substantial rights and the constitutional rights given to us within both constitutions. They act like those are suspended at birth, and we have to earn them every time we go into court, go into one of their forms. That's not how it's supposed to work.
We have constitutional rights, and then we have inalienable rights.
Right. I mean, well, you have some unalienable rights, such as the right to pursuit of happiness. Those are things that are natural rights, and those are the rights that all men and women have, all creatures really that walk the earth. If you read Blackstone's commentaries of the laws of England, where he talks about the philosophy of the evolution of the law of man and the rights of men and persons versus the rights of things, and it's a very it's full of case law, but it's also very philosophical in some circumstances. And the philosophers of law believe that men are divine in their nature, and that they will come to live in harmony with nature, just as the birds and the bees do, and the wind. That what men need to do is learn the law of nature that allows men to live harmoniously. These people, if you even walk the midline there, are trying to make it within the nature of mankind to have sex with babies and to rape babies and to kill babies. Now, that's kind of a barbaric construct of primitive. That's a primitive society at best. That's a predatory society at best. It's not conducive for the purposes of law. And so this is where what they're talking is not law. In all my reading, I've only read twice where they stated what the purpose of law was. And one of them was in a treatise book from the mid-1800s, and they said that law is a shield. Law is a shield to the infant and the insane. And I've added the infirmed because I think that the gravely ill deserve to be protected and have the law as a shield to them. So that's one definition, a purpose of law, that to be a shield to the infant and the insane and the infirm, the disenfranchised, the people who can't fend for themselves, the old people, the weak, the sick, those people.
Trafficking, Lotus. They're also doing this with the elderly as well.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes, they actually. That's how you know they're not in law. That's how you know they're not the law. That they're doing nothing about what they're doing is law. Because the law says they can't do what they're doing, but they're still doing it. So they're not even operating in their own law. Because they're actually, by their gaming, they're abusing a system that's built on the trust of the instrument. We trust that the people in our government are not affecting treason and gaming and criminal racketeering within our instruments of state. That's what we trust that our government is not doing. We have never had in the history of our country potentially had to bring forth a federal common law grand jury that will be set for the indictment of war crimes against humanity. That's what we're looking at here. We're looking at a baby trafficking, pedophilia, world cult, human trafficking ring that has affected crimes against humanity using the instruments of our state.
And child
that's a big deal. That's
is the favorite arm of the government to target parents that don't, and children, the vulnerable, that don't have this shield. And
absolutely, or to use vulnerable, or to extort
exactly,
from the most disenfranchised class.
They don't have the access to the funds to be able to defend themselves in court. So basically, when there's no due process, it's extortion. It's kidnapping.
It's gaming. It's racketeering. Yes, it's eating the substance of the people. The same thing the same people were doing in 1776.
We, the people, cannot sustain this level of corruption. We cannot.
Well, we're not going to pay for it. We're not going to pay for it anymore. We're not going to suretize it anymore. People don't understand that every one of these egregious, disgusting crimes against humanity acts, even perpetrated upon our own children, are bonded instruments and are sold under the Treasury. This is creating treasury bonds. These fraudulent acts, these fraudulent claims are affecting treasury bonds through the judiciary with them, and they're also getting funding from the federal instrument, the United States Corporation, under Title IV for doing it. They're fleecing us on the backside through the judiciary horribly, and they're fleecing us on the front side on the claims horribly. This is a gross violation of due process of law, and there's nothing in Title IV that has given these attorneys and these judges and these state bar unions the capacity to suspend due process of law and steal babies from parents without warrant under force and gun and threat and coercion and criminal coercion. It's disgusting. It's a Holocaust. It's a Holocaust. It's right in front of our noses.
And, you know, this is the thing. Donald Trump tweeted, people's lives are being shattered and destroyed by mere allegation. Some are true, some are false, some are old, some are new. There is no recovery for someone falsely accused. Life and career.
No, it's a fatal tort.
Yeah.
It's a fatal tort.
And there's no remedy
for the
right
state.
Now. There's no remedy. So
we're working on that because, and here's how. Here's why.
The Supreme Court on behalf of the children and families.
Here's why there's no remedy. It's not within the interest of the fiduciary to have your best interest, you know, because here's the deal. Let's say that supposedly for every case, this is my understanding, supposedly for every case initiated, there are 3 bonds, a bid bond, a judicial bond, there's a third. I don't know the names of it, someone could probably pull it up. This is what I understand. I don't know, I've not seen these personally, this is what I'm just people have said to me, multiple people, that there's bonds initiated. There's a bond when there's a criminal cause of action because people have to sign them. But even in civil actions, they're saying bonds are created, and the judiciary, though the clerks issue those bonds, or the courts themselves issue the bonds because they're banks, and they derivatize and wrap those through the Treasury. Okay, like they are derivatized instruments that the Treasury then wraps into bonds. Okay, so every court case, it has the full faith and credit of the American people as a securitized instrument. So that's my understanding. Now, so they're making money. So if they bond, if every instrument gets 3 bonds, I mean, I've heard some people say they've seen the value of just a stay away order, and it was worth something like $16 million. Okay, when's the last time you heard of an attorney getting a $16 million lawsuit from someone who was just kept from seeing his kid? No, they get $2.5 million lawsuits when they unlawfully murder your child somewhere. You know, they're paying out pennies on the surety side on claims against these egregious crimes against the family or whatever, but on the backside they made $45 million by wrapping the bond. So where's the fiduciary duty to care whether they killed your kid? The attorneys are preventing claims from bankrupting the state, even claims that are egregious, like human baby trafficking. They have allowed and have conspired to allow these egregious crimes against the American people to occur because they're making so much money on these fraudulent claims. And no attorney has ever pushed the bank.
Our president is not an unintelligent man. I mean, he's very sharp and very intelligent, and he's got to know that this is happening. He's got to know. I mean, just this.
Well, one would think he'd look into it. One would think he'd look into it, and he'd expect some results. Is what I think about him. But I'm just saying that, from the way I understand things to work, there's no fiduciary duty for any attorney to change anything because they're making off with the bank for their state, the state as God kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they're preventing claims from happening. That was the biggest issue in the claim with our son and all the habeases. They literally said that not only could we not bring a habeas...
What is the difference when you commit fraud on the court and you take a baby based on this fraud with no due process? What is the difference between the common criminal kidnapping a child and the Child Protective Services kidnapping?
From what I can tell, nothing, except you have the title of nobility of a state instrument. This is why the TONA made it so statutes apply to the agent. Okay, everybody who works for the state and the federal government or any agency or agent thereof is considered a statutory agent, an ins legis instrument, and they are bound by the statutes. They don't bind me. I don't work for the state. Those statutes are for the conduct governing the people who work within the state. That's their rules. Mm-hmm. So they're all called under color of law. Anybody who has an instrument of a state, a cop, a judge, a prosecuting attorney, a governor, attorney general, anybody who's an agent of the state, federal or state level, national or general. Let's put it that way. General is the state government, national government is federal government. Anybody, military, any of those, they are under the color of law. There are statutes and administrative codes and procedures that determine and tell them specifically when they're instruments of state what they shall and shall not do, when they shall and shall not do it, and when it shall be a crime based upon the rules, the statutes of the state. Those are not supposed to be imposed on us. They're supposed to be for them, but they've flipped the bar. They're not holding themselves at all to law and doing whatever they want to do in the instrument of the coup and imposing all the statutes upon us and laying fraudulent claims against us. I mean, it's an easy cleanup. It really is easy to fix the system. The first thing, and probably one of the major things you got to do, get rid of all the criminality within the systems of state, because that's 99% of your problem right there. Get rid of the corruption and the racketeering and the gaming and the baby trafficking and the all-out criminal activity in the instruments of state. Those are high crimes. There are statutes that govern that. Substantial rights violations under color of law against children are supposed to get you life in prison. Did you know that? Title 241, 242. life in prison.
Not, I mean,
if
even in the instance with Anthony Weiner, his sentence carried a minimum sentence of 10 years, and he's got 2 years in federal prison. 2 years.
Yeah, and that in a state prison or a federal prison?
I think it's federal. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Well, if it's federal, I tell you what, he better go. Let's put it this way: he better have given away the whole house of cards to get that much leniency, from what I understand was going on in his computer and his life. Mm-hmm. And probably after 2 years, I hope he demanded witness protection in an isolated cell for 2 years, because, I mean, there's no way, from what I understand was going on with him, that he shouldn't be in life in prison, period.
And the majority of these crimes, are not being committed by civilians. This is clearly
again, it's sure taking the mistake.
What
the attorneys are.
There's one set of laws for the government workers, the foster traffickers, and there's another set of laws for the lay person.
Absolutely, and that the attorneys are making sure that the people they work for in corruption and racketeering aren't going to get the full force and merit of the law. They'll always get by because they paid special money, they take bribes. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That kind of stuff is warring against the American people and warring against the laws of the United States. It should be met with the full force of crimes of high treason. And you start hanging some people if they have proof that that's happened. And I don't mean in back rooms. I don't want them on military bases outside the eyes of cameras. I want this on the TV. I want the people who think they can stick their finger in the American people's eyes to start realizing that there is a penalty. Because I'm going to tell you, if the military doesn't take care of this, it is getting to the point where the people will. And then the military will have no trust from us. We won't trust them. We won't trust them.
We already don't trust the mainstream media.
I know we already barely trust them to begin with.
No, and
because we already know there's a coup. We know that the coup has to be within the military. Well, you know the coup has to be somewhere within the bounds of the military, but I would imagine they clean their stuff up pretty quick because they run by different sets of rules there. Mm-hmm. They don't have this hem-haw stuff. But these agents of states in high positions of power, if they think that they're just going to stick them in Guantanamo and not try these people and not have trials and start you're going to try them, it's going to take, that's fine, arrest them. If you have a foundation for arresting someone for high treason, there's no reason they're not in jail right now. No reason. None. They don't have a problem going and getting the poor, disenfranchised drug addict off the street corner who really just needs a meal and some love and some understanding, but they'll let a high treason person walk around who's committed how many untold offenses against the American people, walking around with their suits on free as a bird. That's egregious and disgusting.
George Soros?
I don't even, again, that just goes to show you that as long as you can pay an attorney, but see, here's the thing, that legal system stops in the military. That's the point here. The military is there. They are there under the authority of the military.
People need to be arrested. George
Soros, there
are
some people in government that
or banned from meddling in our political processes.
Well, there are some people who have affected crimes, and they know it. Comey committed a crime. He lied to Congress.
Yeah, he's a baby trafficker.
The point is this: if I lied to Congress, my butt would be in jail already. For sure.
Yep.
If I lied to a cop, you get like 5 years. It's like this ridiculous crap. Pardon my French, but I'm going to tell you that the more we don't see happening along the lines of prosecutions and arrests for what is clearly and evident crimes, the more frustration will come out of the American people as time drags on. And and I'm going to tell you, if things don't happen within the Trump administration, I say in the next year, you're going to see some serious grumblings in these, because we're not going to tolerate the continuation of the babies being stolen.
No, and these
we're not going to continue to have
these staged shooting events which is, a way for them to confiscate guns. It's really contrived, and it's very obvious. The people aren't going to continue. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You can already see online.
It's really funny.
What?
Well, I think that there's great evidence that it is all contrived and deep state actors.
Yeah, and
I know that
our president isn't. He's got to notice. He's got to notice.
Well, I can't see how he doesn't. I can't see how he doesn't notice. I mean, but I think that the one thing we wanted to point out, because here's the second purpose of law. Okay, this is Aristotle's perception. Law is their men in their natural capacities, with the first instrument of a society being the family, and this is what they're trying to attack. This is why they're fascist and communist, and their whole goal is to deconstruct our society by destabilizing the integral part of the family. So they make it so both the mother and father have to work. I mean, these are really contrived programs of the state, of the communist state, which have been contrived and controlled by attorneys who are the bulwark of the Communist Party.
Family units
that was declared
are really revolutionary in this day and age, with how they're warring on the family so much.
Oh, they're warring on the family, and their Christianity are the foundations of our society and law. We're founded on the religious freedoms of the Puritans, who brought we're founded on good, wholesome, righteous people who are God-fearing, living together in peace, harmony, working together for a common good to protect our families and to make life gooder. That's make life good. Law is there to make life good. So if the people wearing your law uniforms and your law robes are not making your life or society better, then they aren't operating in the law. These are basic principles of philosophy that define when someone is lawful and when they are not. If they are harming you, they are not lawful. If what they're doing as an instrument of state is damaging the family unit, they're not within the purpose of their mandate to be in the law. Mm-hmm. If they are harming the infant, the insane, and the infirm, or milking them, or targeting them, or extorting them, or torturing them, that is not law. That is the opposite. Instead of being the shield to them, they are attacking them, which tells you they are the opposite of law. That is how you know, without even knowing the particularities of statutes and codes and rules and anything constitutional or anything. If you can look at a man operating as an agent of state and saying, he's not shielding the infant, the insane, or the infirm, and he's actually making my society worse, that guy's not in the law. That's all you need to know. That is the basic premise of law. So he can't call himself a law officer if he's beating the crap out of a 12-year-old,
I never in a million years would have imagined that we'd be having some of these discussions in law.
I know.
It's
I know. Well, it's so convoluted. We don't even know. We've been so lied to. Everybody is being lied to. Cops, robbers, everybody. Both sides of the coin. Attorneys, the senators, people.
Become full-on communist China because they want to censor people that have thought process, that think, that actually...
Well, that's like mass social program. Anymore I see every nation as an instrument of an experiment run by, the elite to see what state will fail and what one won't, what all they can do before they get it to fail.
But, what's going on. It's disgusting that we're even... It's like you said, it's repugnant that we're even having to have these conversations in law.
I don't think they're used to us seeing it. I don't think that we've ever caught on to what they're doing in such a gross, open fashion. I know that our founding fathers knew about it, mm-hmm. and I know that this country was founded upon the premise of creating an instrument of law that could steer away from that and correct such gross abuses. Look, we are New Rome. We are in the same place that Rome was in just before the Peloponnesian War. The Civil War was actually the thwarting of a second Peloponnesian War with an instrument that was under the hand of the Roman Empire, under civil rule. And, with the two fasces as in the House of Congress on each side of the Speaker's chamber, that means it's the power of police and authority and to keeping the peace and the public safety of the people. So the House of Congress has the two fasces sitting right on the wall, and that determines what its job is. We're an instrument of an extension of the laws of Rome, having evolved 2,000 years ago. These are things that we're in a constant turnover of law that works, refining the law that works, honing the law that works, to supposedly on the march to make men's life gooder in a way where we produce a state whose laws are the shield for the infant, for the insane and the infirm. No one else need protected, do they? No one else should need protected in a righteous society because we're all law-abiding. But you want to make sure that the state, but the point of the law is
all the time on the porthole to justice, and
it's real simple to fix. Just take out the reprobate men and women in the instruments, the seats of our government. Just start there. Take them out and watch our lives turn around.
So
around.
You're going before the Supreme Court, am I correct, on behalf of the children and families?
Well, if we have to, we certainly will. I'll go to International Court of Claims. I'll go to The Hague. I'll go as far as I need to go to expose the corruption and the frauds being effected against our society by these criminals that are operating in a worldwide fashion, secretly in coup and deep, dark caverns of secret societies. I don't care what you call it. We're in coup. We have people who have couped the instruments of our state, and they are affecting war against the American people in the systems of judiciary. If you lose the judiciary, people, you're done. If you don't have a judiciary that operates on behalf of the people that it administrates the law and estates of, you are done. You are not a nation. You are in occupation. You are having overseers. You are living in a very large concentration camp. Mm-hmm. That's all you have. So, if we don't fix the judiciary and you don't fix the FBI and the DOJ, all the branches of government that are mandated with executing within the states and the instruments of state and the banks and our government, the law. They're rogue. They're rogue. We are a lost nation. Now, I didn't say lost country. We are a lost nation if we don't have a judiciary that isn't corrupted with racketeering and gaming and criminal enterprises. If the judiciary cannot clean up its act from within its unions and start affecting their fiduciary duty and stop trafficking humans and babies willfully and routing out the criminals within themselves and turning them over to the military, because that's where they belong. When judges traffic babies, they belong to the military. That's a crime against humanity. It's not a crime of Oklahoma.
I'm so disgusted with Comey. I've made amends about, because we in the Portal to Justice, we had a letter campaign, and I thought under the new administration, the Trump administration, it would be different, but we're still getting the same responses from the FBI not wanting to investigate the fraud.
Well, the coup is the FBI is a neutered instrument. It seems to me that it has no leadership right now that has any construct of how to run a lawful organization that I see. I mean, I'm not paying a lot of attention to it, but you have to understand these attorneys have been lied to as well. They are following union. Imagine the Teamsters running your judiciary, okay? Because that's what you got. You got a union like the Teamsters, who were inundated with internal corruption and racketeering and criminal enterprises, running your courts in small state unions with untold budgets and their own personal army.
Funding, Title IV funding, unlimited. In fact, the more of a mess that the leaders of Child Protective Services make, the supervisor or those appointed to oversee Child Protective Services, they get more money. They get more funding. In fact, they will even promote.
Well, that's just the money on the books. How much do they get when they sell a baby right out of the hospital that they plan to take because there's a second generation? Now listen, hold on. Let me finish this, because this is an important aspect of the Deconstruction Society too. They're actually in a way affecting a legal blood debt, because they take parents and put their parents in prison for victimless crimes of drug addiction, and really they need a job, they need this or that. They don't need to be put in prison. They need the state to fix its own instruments and serve the people again. And they put them in prison instead, which leaves a vacuum in the family. You get kids that are brought up you get sons that are brought up with any fathers in the household that then become victims to the streets themselves and disenfranchisement. Oh, and don't you know, then they just go after that kid. Then they just put him in prison. He can be in prison with his daddy. It's a blood debt society they're creating, where they're cultivating generational imprisonment. It is a slave nation. It is a big concentration camp they're working on, folks.
It's so obvious now.
That's all it is.
It's so obvious now, and I don't know. I don't think the people can sustain this level of corruption. I just don't.
They won't. We can't. It's not going to happen. Americans aren't that stupid. Americans are not that stupid. It's starting to be obvious. They can try all the propaganda they want. Yes, a certain percentage. Look, the first revolution only took 3% of the population to overthrow the schmucks. There is far more than 3% in the know of what's going on in this country right now. And those percentages that are there are well armed and they're tired. And I'm not advocating violence at all. I'm definitely into the courts in this. But they need to start giving some from the top and showing that they are serious about this corruption. And they need to do something about these propaganda Nazi mills called the news. I mean, we live in 1984. Like, it was one of my things that said, why don't you just have a shot of vodka while you're at it? You're sitting in a bar with fluoride float through your...
They're putting out this very divisive fake news. That's for sure. I mean...
Yeah, it's propaganda. It's propaganda. It's all state-run propaganda. And I never thought...
The public is very divided on the Child Protective Services corruption. There's two modes of thought.
What's to be divided about?
There's the one mode of thought that, the parents must have done something to deserve it, which it's not. That is definitely not always the case. There is.
Well, they're probably the same people that are just as stupid. They're the same stupid people that think you have to actually commit a crime to go to prison in this country, too. That's what I tell them straight to their face.
Yeah.
If you're that stupid, to think that the volume of children being trafficked in these probate courts is because, let me tell you something else. Well, he's a drug addict. He deserves not to have his kid. Okay, well, next time you don't pay your court fines, we're going to take your kid. Next time you don't do this, we're going to take your kid. See, kids are not a pawn or a betting artifice to get parents to surrender to unconstitutional statutization and abrogation of their substantial rights. That is a crime. That is against our law. That is called racketeering.
It's racketeering.
That is gaming. Yep. That is using the systems of the statutes and the judiciary to affect bonds and fraudulent claims and claims against our jubilee. People don't understand that when you're where do the people think they get these government? Do they actually think that the government runs on our tax money? Does anyone actually believe that our government only runs on the taxes that the IRS collect? Do you actually believe that that's like a paycheck? Do people think that the government is like, oh, my paycheck is the IRS proceeds, and I'm going to turn around and pay for the government? No, that's not how it works. They have a bank account, folks. Their bank account is based on a trust. They have a line of credit, let's say.
Well, we see
these
politicians that make $170,000 a year, yet they're worth millions and billions of dollars.
I think that's called material material gain, unjust material gain in office. There's a term for it when you unjust enrichment. I think when you've been in Congress and you started off in Congress a poor pauper, or let's say you even had $500,000 to your name because you're somebody's son, and you go and you work for Congress for $174,000 a year, and after 10 years you're worth $40 million. I think that would be considered unjust enrichment in your office, and that actually would be probably under the titles of emoluments. But see, we already defined the penalty of emoluments that you lose under the TONA Amendment, which was lawfully passed in 1809. They don't tell you that. They try to pretend like it's not. Because, see, they all have given themselves emoluments. Attorneys are accepting emolument of Esquire. Those little pretty doctors who run the whole AMA and the prescription and the drug industry and the research of how the CDC operates and the immunizations and all that crazy stuff. Oh, and what gets sprayed in the sky and what doesn't get. Those scientists up there, those chemists, those are all licensed instruments of state, folks. Those are all titles of nobility. And those titles of nobility, they are running your country, just like they did before. But the TONA says they're not supposed to be doing that. And they're not really running our country. They're running the nation. They're running the banks and the agencies of state. Still, they're not supposed to be there. It tells you that they're not de jure. They're operating in trust law. They're operating under a usufructuary trust. They're operating on a reserve, fractionalized reserve system called the Federal Reserve. There's no material wealth being transferred. It's all in the hands of the elite. We're operating on notes, but the notes are drawn off of the people's wealth. That we're the ones here. They're eating off of us. They're supposed to be serving us, and they're eating us. The state mandates that it's supposed to serve the people. It's eating the people. It's eating the substance of the people, and it's eating it through fraud and criminal activity and people just affecting treason and sedition. I mean, I don't even think that this level of treason and sedition that is occurring right now in our country openly in what's happening in Congress and the DOJ and the FBI and the previous executive branch and the Secretary of State and yada, 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 right? I don't think that level of corruption existed during the Civil War. I really don't think it did. We're worse, I think, as far as sedition and treason in the secret backroom, deep state coup than we probably ever were before the Civil War. It's far more contrived. It's international in scope. It's multinational in scope. I mean, you have the potentiality of foreign governments conspiring with our own government to overthrow an election of our country? What's that all about? I mean, they want to tell you that it was Trump's side, but it was actually Hillary and Obama. Conspiring with Britain and what other country was it? Australia was named in it. They felt the need to convey drunken hearsay to our FBI. It's just crazy talk. And these are foreign nations trying to undermine the will of the American people. That's treason. Mm-hmm. Those are treasonous acts. And I'm not going to stop saying that. I'm not going to stop saying that there is a very fascist element to our country right now.
And you're not going to settle in court either, right?
No, I'm not going to settle. No, because I'm not going to settle because they'll just keep doing it. They've been doing it for like 30 years. When did Title IV get enacted, And before that, it was Boys Town. And before that, it was this. It was hidden under the auspices of slavery. Not just black slavery. Whites were slaves, too. Natives were slaves. Asians were slaves.
Yeah, it's more open and it's more prevalent, and they're trying to legislate it and actually make it legal. And
they're trying to institutionalize that open Babylonian slave trade law, which is just Sharia law is just its footprint. The footprint of Sharia law is based upon Babylonian. Yes, Sharia law is Babylonian slave trade law. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. That's all it's ever been. The Muslim faith, I don't care if people think it's offensive or not, the Muslim faith is based upon slave trading.
It's been illegal in the United States of America, I think, since like the 1950s or 40s, somewhere around
well, the law has affirmed that it's against the law to traffic a man for a long time. Our law said it's been unlawful to traffic a man for over 2,000 years. The Bible has made that a crime against, nature and God's will for 2,000 years. So it's not been the common man doesn't have a problem understanding that. It just seems that the people who think they have the authority of state have a problem with that.
They're all guilty. That's why they're all guilty, and that's why they want to push forward to legalize.
Well, and this is what I'm going to say about that as from a sociologist standpoint, which I do not have a sociology degree, although I have a great many social sciences hours. Okay, I would say that people who tend to be narcissistic, sociopathic, and authoritarian personality disorders, which is the proper term used for narcissist and psychopath, and sociopath, which is authoritarian personality disorders, tend to like to hide in groups together because then they kind of obfuscate their independent psychosis. Like, for some reason, humanity has this perception that 3 crazy men are legitimate when 1 crazy man with the same ideology is not. So I think that in the course of human nature, people have tended to create states for 2 purposes.
It's also a law, isn't it, where it takes 3 witnesses to
two witnesses make a fact, but you know, a witness of 2 makes fact. But one of those witnesses can be God in the 4th crown. You just have to know what it means. You have to aver it properly. But God is always your witness. That's why you used to put your hand on the Bible. You know, you were swearing under the law of the Bible. People don't understand, you know, don't put it's a crime to swear on the Bible. You're not swearing on the Bible. You're saying that you're going to tell the truth based upon the laws within the Bible that say, you know, that's blasphemy. There's law written in the Bible that says when you perjure yourself, you know, it's crime. It's lawlessness. So you're swearing upon the law of the Bible. So that's what that was about. You know, so a witness of 2 makes fact in our law. And for them, they try to say that a witness of 1 makes fact when it's not even substantiated, when they won't even make affidavits. You know, you don't need 2 witnesses to put someone away anymore.
They can rationalize, you know.
They rationalize the foundations of law away. That's what they do.
Any way they can.
And they argue particularities. They argue particularities.
The same thing with these staged events and trying to take away the Second Amendment. Which I don't even think the Second Amendment is what allows us to have arms, isn't it? Our inalienable rights.
Right. Well, we're allowed to have arms. I mean, that's an unalienable right. And there's very clear guidelines in old case law that state that the constitutional rights may be extended and not expanded. They're very clear. Creating a secondary, you know, the extension of law means you extend it downward into the states, but you can't expand it. So, for example, Title IV is an extension of federal benefits into the states to help children through the Social Security Administration who are in need of basic familial subsistence, supposedly for violence within the family unit. But the states have expanded the grant to everything they can get their hands on and are stealing babies for all these impermissible purposes not authorized by Title IV and suspension of due process of law. That would be an expansion of the grant. That is 100% unconstitutional. That has been established in the 1800s. So why is it happening? Why is it happening? Okay. And a sophist would say, not talking to the particularities of the harm of what it's doing, that you do such expansions in order to expand the argument of law, such as the expansion of the titled Medicaid and Medicare programs. But see, you're not just talking about dollar bills.
We have psychiatrists, we have pharmaceutical companies, we have police, we have all these agents who are working in this unholy framework to corrupt.
I would say it's very holy as in holes in it. It has so many holes in it. But the holes are being allowed by the judiciary, okay? The judiciary is not even requiring the states to be in compliance with the federal mandates they agreed to be in compliance with in order to receive funding. No one is enforcing the statutes.
Well,
nobody.
I've gone like way over our hour time frame, but
yeah.
I want to say, thank you so much for all of the work that you do, and we set a special. I set a special prayer for you on 20 on 20.
I appreciate any prayers. I just want people to know what's going on by reading these things. Just go educate. And I know it may seem overwhelming, but I tell you, the hardest thing to overcome is the lack of knowledge. If everyone actually understood the structure of their government and knew what the true structure is and what roles everybody plays, this would be so much easier for them to see on how really simple it is to fix it. People just need to follow the law. We just need to follow the law.
It may actually come down to that we need a military tribunal. I mean...
Well, I'm going to tell you, there better be a military tribunal already being affected because crimes within the executive branch...
We need another Nuremberg so badly.
Well, I think this Nuremberg's going to hang way more than 4 people. But I'm going to tell you, if there have been arrests affected, I want them to start disclosing these happenings to us. I refuse to allow, I am not going to be happy, nor will I allow an entire sweeping under the rug of this egregious coup.
Whole, like, QAnon calling person to come on and disclose that, we have a military tribunal. No. I want a press piece. We want mainstream media. Yeah.
Yep. I want it out there so that the mainstream media can't cough on it, can't hiccup on it. The American people, they have a duty to disclose that. There's no way that it is in the best interest of this country to have a silent coup that has been affecting baby trafficking being hidden in its correction from the American. I'm sorry, no. That in itself would be a crime against the American people, and I would say would be a crime against, or be a warrant against the laws of the United States. We have every right to know what's going on, and we're not the ones in the demand of that are affecting national security.
And I appreciate what you're doing in the courts, and thank you so much for coming on the Porthole to Justice, Ms. Lotus.
Well, I appreciate it, and I tell you, I think we're almost there. I think that I'm just hoping. Right up the turn, the bend in the turn, there's going to be a bend in the road, and we're going to turn the corner, and it's just going to be like this cascading. We've seen the domino effect of the criminality. Now I want to start seeing the domino effect of the prosecution, the arrest, and the people put in Guantanamo Bay. And I don't care if it takes another 4 years or 6 years of Trump. I don't care. I don't care if it takes another 12 years. I want these people prosecuted.
Human trafficking by 2020, it needs to be shut down. It needs to be shut down.
Absolutely. Within all systems of state, it needs to be stifled with a severe and definitive hammer. Yeah. That's the egregious part. Human trafficking in our society, that I could see happening easily without people noticing potentially, but within the systems of state, that can't happen. This judicial coup needs to end. Needs to end now.
It needs to end.
And these babies need to stop being seized. So I appreciate you, and we'll keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting till this is done.
I'm here till it's done, till the fat lady sings.
Me too.
I love you. All right, guys.
Hey, well, everyone. I love you, and I love the listeners.
All right.
Anybody who spends time listening to what we're talking about deserves a couple blessings themselves, because I know this stuff's hard to hear. So I'm glad that they can take it and do with it spiritually what they need to do. So
keep tuning in to the show. Brother. You need to be empowered, and knowledge is power. All right, everyone, this has been another episode of Porthole to Justice, the window to the truth. You can subscribe for free and download the app on Spreaker.com. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great evening.